Welcome back to another edition of Political Breakfast. We are always glad that you join us and check in for some political talk. Strategists Tharon Johnson and Brian Robinson are both here. So is our producer, Lily Oppenheimer. This kind of stood out early in the week, those Dooley and Collins numbers that they're reporting. Any surprises there in terms of what they're raising in the Senate race at this point?
I am a little surprised. Those are strong numbers. And we have to remember that unlike on the state level, the contribution limits are much lower for federal races. So they're not collecting these in $8,000 checks. They're collecting them in much smaller numbers. One thing that really impressed me on the Mike Collins side is 40,000 individual donors with an average of less than $50 per donor and a national fundraising base, all 50 states represented in that donor list. And this is on the heels of Collins putting out a monster endorsement list earlier in the summer that showed a lot of momentum, a lot of grassroots support there. And the Dooley argument has been, we're going to have the Kemp Network, which is a baller fundraising network. And every major Republican donor in the state is basically a part of that network. And they can, in theory, collect checks in much larger chunks than Collins can with his, grassroots fundraising base from these big Republican donors. And what you're seeing here is some parity. So I think parity in fundraising is actually a slight win for Mike Collins. And there was a slight advantage to Mike Collins in the total raise over 2 months. So this is something where right now these Republicans are trying to make a case to Donald Trump that they are the most viable in this race. And the grassroots support plus being able to compete in fundraising is going to be a major plus for Mike Collins when making the argument for the Trump endorsement. So if Dooley had come out and just bigfooted Collins, it's like, we showed you, we told you we were going to be the fundraising force. They can't keep up with us. We're going to be the ones who can have the resources to reach Georgians. That certainly would have been noticed by Donald Trump. And one thing I would love for our audience to know as a Republican operative to tell them is Trump and his team are very tuned in to Georgia politics and who is raising how much, who is got momentum, who is going to have a chance to surge in the polls and differentiate themselves. They are very much tuned in. And so there's a...
How do you know that?
Because I'm a Republican operative working on a lot of campaigns, and I know, and I see this happening all the time. One thing that's been different this cycle than I've seen in the past as an operative is Republican candidates now must make a pilgrimage to the White House and meet with Trump's political team. It is something you have to do. And if you don't, that raises a red flag. You even look in the governor's race, you got Chris Carr, who doesn't have the endorsement. Burt already has it. Burt's the only person right now who's got that Trump endorsement in any of these races in Georgia. Carr has been to the White House 4 times this year, doing human trafficking stuff, doing drug interdiction stuff, crime prevention stuff. So he's been there, even though he doesn't have the endorsement. So all of these candidates are going there trying to make their case to Trump. And believe me, the news Monday of the Collins number, the Dooley number, the White House has taken note, and both of those campaigns are communicating with the president and his team. And now we got to wait to see what is Buddy Carter going to post. Is he going to be way, way behind? No. Is he going to be buoyed by his own money, which isn't the same, which is not going to be received the same by the White House? I think we're all in a wait and see there. If he did something competitive, as far as fundraising from outside sources, not his own money, that's a strong case for him too.
Well, is this rattling Ossoff, Tharon, in any way, any of these numbers?
The Ossoff folks are paying very close attention to it, but I think that what Senator Ossoff and his folks would say is that it just shows you how chaotic this primary is going to be on the U.S. Senate side, because now you have Collins and Dooley basically releasing similar numbers. And if Carter comes in with numbers that are lower or higher, then that's going to be even more, I think, of a good position for Senator Ossoff. I mean, we know that he's a very focused political fundraiser. And so he's got to look at this and say, man, like these guys, particularly Derek Dooley, if I'm going to be fair, because there are going to be some Democratic numbers come out, so I expect my good friend Brian to be fair too. But Derek Dooley, who's a newcomer, to raise $2 million is impressive. And you may remember I said on this podcast that there was an effort underway to make sure that some of the big check writers, people who have money that can get behind them, but also to be fair to Mike Collins, he's posting a big number too, because he actually was going up against the governor's sort of apparatus and machine too. So Derek Dooley was a recipient of the Kemp people, because B-Rob knows this. And I always try Lily and Lisa to take y'all into those calls. And he's worked for Governor Deal. When you're on the campaign side and you get that call from the governor, or you get that call from the governor's guy or gal and say, hey, I need that $8,200 check, or I need that $25,000, whatever the limits are on the federal side. You take that call and you got to make that. You got to make that play. You got to really make sure you make that donation. So I think what I'm really interested in, once I look into the numbers, is how much of that money of it was from Derek Dooley supporters who are just with him no matter what, and then how much of that money is from people who Kemp influence, whether with his endorsement or direct calls. But I agree with B-Rob. I think Buddy Carter's numbers are going to be important. And I would tell you this, folks all across the country are looking at this race. Jon Ossoff is the number one target for Republicans, but I believe that he's battle tested, he's ready, and just the enthusiasm that I felt that the Congressional Black Caucus, from talking to members there, Georgians all across the state, he is doing everything he can to put together the best apparatus, whether it's directly with his campaign or utilizing the other resources available to him to make sure that the nominee who prevails, he'll be able to defeat them. Because if you're Republican right now, no matter who prevails, the money is going to be there for them to try to beat Jon Ossoff. But I think also Ossoff has got to continue to raise as much money as he can to make sure that he has the apparatus in place as well.
Absolutely. And let me add on a couple of things there. I can't contradict anything Tharon says. Just let me add on. He's absolutely right. That is an impressive number by Derek Dooley for a newcomer, even with the governor's support. Because there's this assumption for some folks, if you come in, I'm the governor's guy, everybody loves the governor, all the donors are going to be with me because of the governor. It doesn't work that way. You don't just turn your website on and money pours in, unless you're Raphael Warnock or Stacey Abrams. That seems to work for them. Like they just hey, donate online, and it comes in. For Derek Dooley, he's getting that number by sitting in an office for hours a day, dialing for dollars. Yes, he is calling on people who support the governor and are expecting his phone call. That certainly helps. He's got that advantage. But you got to put in the time. And look, it still sucks. Nobody likes raising money. And Collins, I want to give him his due because he did come in first in the fundraising battle. And let's take into consideration what we just said about Derek Dooley. Collins is calling some of these big donors who are saying, Mike, I'm secretly with you, but I'm not going to be on your disclosure because I don't want to get an angry call or text from Governor Kemp. I'm a Kemp guy. I love Kemp. I'm not going to get on the wrong side of him. So Collins' number is coming in spite of those pressures. And Ossoff, one thing that I can add to what Tharon said is he's already got $15 million in the bank. That's a big haul. That's impressive. And what Ossoff has to do is keep a steady and impressive pace. He's got to show Democrat donors and the Democratic Party in the state and nationally that he's going to do the work, that he is going to do everything it takes to keep this seat. And I would argue that his number right now proves that he is meeting that standard. He's getting over that bar. But $15 million, $15 million doesn't matter in this race, right? He just has to keep impressions up. He has to have a good appearance. There's going to be $250 million spent on his behalf. And it ain't all going to be him dialing for dollars, right?
It's his race to lose.
The money's going to be pouring in, and Republicans have got to take that into consideration, too, in the governor's race. Who is going to be able to go and win the governor's race when the Democrats are spending $250 million to turn out their voters in the Senate race? That is a calculation Republicans must make. Ossoff is an incumbent. And so Republicans have to think, how many voters will vote for Ossoff and then vote for a Republican for governor? That is something that Republicans must calculate.
Tharon, the Democratic Party of Georgia had its annual Carter Lewis fundraising dinner over the weekend. Any big news coming out of that?
Well, first of all, I think that the look, the feel, and the structure of the dinner was definitely different under Charlie Bailey's leadership. I'll be fully disclosed with you, Lisa. I have not been to one of these dinners in a long time. And Charlie and I had a good conversation. And the fact that he reached out, one thing that he knows, Lisa, is that it's not just about candidates, but it's also about getting the operatives and making sure that the people around the state feel included. So I know this is a very big mission for him to make sure that folks down in Tifton and people up in Rome and folks out in Carrollton and folks, all the way over in Newton County and Augusta felt like they could actually be welcome. So I felt a very good statewide energy in the room. We have a lot of political breakfast fans, by the way, who were at the dinner. The second thing that I noticed right away is that folks are really unified, meaning like we're all behind Jon Ossoff, and we're going to all be behind whoever the gubernatorial candidate is going to be. But also, Lisa, just seeing all these different candidates in the room, I was like, man, this looks like Georgia. I mean, the amount of women who are running. And then look, Governor Pritzker from Illinois had a good message. We know that he's been mentioned as a potential candidate for president in 2028. He did a really good job of not focusing on that, but really making some striking similarities between what he's been able to do in a state like Illinois and what we can do in Georgia. He was very complimentary of the work that is being done. So, I mean, look, it was a packed house. Security was heightened because we do now live in this sort of world where we have to take security into consideration. So, Democrats, Lisa, we don't like, not feeling like we can't be free. So a lot of us had to wait a little longer to go through the security to get into the actual event. But no, it was really good. Shout out to the party. They did a wonderful job. And shout out to all the different county parties around the state who were invited and got their people there. And I think a lot of folks left there feeling very, very inspired.
Any October surprises coming? It's October. Any October surprises coming down the pike, you think?
Well, the only race for which there could be an October surprise is the November race for PSC, which I think we need to return to. That's going to be an important race for the state.
Yeah.
Lisa, on Tuesday of this week, Governor Kemp headlined an event for Tim Echols and Fitz Johnson, the Republican incumbents for the PSC. And it just goes to show the governor is engaged. He sees the importance of this. I would imagine that his political operation will engage because, keeping a Republican win streak intact is going to be really important going into 2026 because we have everything that's on the line in 2026. And Republicans can't allow blood to be in the water. So Republicans need to put up a big fight here. I'm glad to see Governor Kemp involved. There's nobody who's got more weight. There's nobody who's going to be a better turnout machine. We would love to see President Trump engage and endorse these candidates and kind of get the MAGA base going. All of those elements are going to be important in turning out the Republican coalition to win in November. So that might be your October surprise, Lisa. It might be like Trump saying, hey, get out there and vote for Public Service Commission in Georgia.
Amen. Yeah.
Well, Lisa, to follow up on your question about the October surprise, the two candidates on the Democratic side, Dr. Alicia Johnson and Peter Hubbard, were clearly displayed at the Carter Lewis dinner. It made it very clear that there was a calling for Democrats all across the state to make sure they turn out and was anticipated to be a very, very low turnout election. But there has been some very strong attack ads that have been recently released, really kind of going after the PSC and the rate hikes. Not saying that I endorse that or, for it, but I'm just, making sure that our viewers understand that, like, there is some outside groups sort of influencing sort of outcome of this race. But I agree with B-Rob. If you want to get a clear scope and barometer of what the electorate looks like, this November would be a first snapshot to really determine the level of enthusiasm that voters have right now as far as like coming out. And will this be a change election or will this be more the same? And so what's been very interesting is that Tim Echols and Fitz Johnson, up until recently, the governor coming out, I mean, they've been kind of more grassroots, more talking directly to their voters. And so will this race become more nationalized? And I don't know if there's any debates coming up, B-Rob, I don't know if you know, but I would love to actually see if there's a debate that will happen because I think voters in Georgia definitely want to hear why these folks are running and what's going on at the PSC.
I think what you're going to see here is what Tharon said, the Democrats focusing on rate hikes and Republicans focusing on how green mandates will drive up costs, and that's what Democrats would bring. And they'll point to New York and Illinois and California where prices are significantly higher than ours. They're going to make the argument Georgia is doing it right, where we are reinvesting in infrastructure while keeping prices below the national average. And if you want to see huge price increases, vote Democrat, right? So that's going to be how the two sides approach this.
Well, and I think I want to say this too, as a Democrat. Look, I am thankful for the freeze on the rate hikes that Georgia Power and others led. All right, so we're not against that. Like we definitely feel that was the right thing to do, and they should be applauded. But I do think, to your point, from an electoral standpoint, you got to make the contrast. And what I think these two candidates are trying to say is that the rates could be lower, but not everybody are against what you just laid out of what the Republicans are saying. And I most just said that for Tricia Pridemore, your good friend, our good friend who listens to this show. This is definitely, I would say, the race to watch. And also, we haven't really talked about this. I mean, you got a black woman, white man, black male Republican, white male Republican. I mean, the dynamics in this race as far as turnout, it's just really fascinating.
It really is. And I don't often do this, but Tharon and I have columns in Georgia Trend magazine every month in addition to doing this show. And my column this month, Google it, is about the PSC race and why Republicans need to tune in and get energized and get out to vote, because there's a lot more at stake than just your power bill. And the power bill is super important. That's important enough on its own. That is a kitchen table issue, a family budget issue. But there's the bigger political meta picture involved here for Georgia voters as well. So tune in, turn out, go vote Republican in the PSC race.
Yeah, that's a good teaser there. Let's delve into that some more next week, because that'll be interesting, the dynamics and just what this race really, truly means. Thank you for another good chat. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend. And you, our listener, thank you so much for checking in for another edition of Political Breakfast right here on WABE.
Rise up.
Go Dogs. Beat Auburn.
Go Dogs. I was waiting for the Go Dogs. Come on, Auburn. Go Dogs. Go Dogs.